if you relate to anyone in this story, the first person you should relate to is Herod. And if you don't, I think we've gotten too comfortable with our own goodness. And we've forgotten that we are Herod. We need Jesus just as much. Yeah, the Magi, they worshiped him great. But our first instinct is always our own self-preservation, our own self-glorification, what is best for me. And that should bring us to our knees in worship.
Exactly. Hey there, mamas. Welcome back to the Gather Moms podcast. We are in our last episode of our Christmas series. And for those of you that have been listening the whole time, you might be wondering if I was going to remember a promise that I made on the first episode of our Christmas series. Kate, do you remember what that was?
I would have forgotten, but you walked in today with your present, and I was like, oh, that's right. I get to open my gift early.
We talked about our Christmas wish list and Kate buying her gifts. Sometimes you're just not sure if she's going to love it. But I told y'all that I have hit the jackpot this time, that this is the present of all presents.
I feel confident.
So I want her to open it on the podcast. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can actually watch her. Otherwise, just listen for the rustle of the Christmas paper.
I know. This might be a nightmare of, it's so cute. She did it like a little candy.
I love to make things cute. Kate loves cute.
You do really good you've done all kinds of fun things with wrapping. You've done.
Yeah. Do you remember this tissue paper?
Yeah. This was from a Gather event.
Like 5 years ago.
Yes. No, I recognized it as soon as you came in. I honestly think this is killer tissue paper.
Wherever you got that 5 years ago, it's a winner.
Yeah, I think I had to order it because we used a ton of it.
Yes. But we had a ton left.
For what? Gifts?
Like the treat boxes. Remember we put the tissue paper down in the treat box?
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
Can I talk to you about something real quick before I look at my gift?
Yes.
Do you remember, this is the difference between Rebecca and I, because we were putting those treat boxes together, and, I had a very specific aesthetic I was looking for in these treat boxes, and they had like a little water bottle, a little nothing bundt cake, and like a little snack, and then you were in charge of getting napkins to put in the boxes.
I don't even remember this.
Okay. We almost came to blows on this. I'm surprised you don't remember this.
I don't.
You showed up with these napkins that were like, I don't even know, friend, like something you would get at like Wendy's.
That cannot be true.
Friend, they were sus napkins. I don't know what this was. I looked at you and I
probably
was like,
blocked this out of my memory because I don't remember it.
I said, what are we doing? Because I was picturing a cute napkin that like went with the theme, and you go, you're just going to have to get over it. And you just started putting the napkins in the boxes. And I was like, all right. And I walked away.
Okay, but does any mom remember the napkin from that event with a negative connotation?
Absolutely not. But there are people like me who, when people pay attention
judged our napkins.
No, but when people pay attention to details, you open something and you go, oh, wow, look how pretty this is. And
that's like 0.05% of the population.
I understand. But, it just shows care and quality.
This is awesome that I have no memory of this at all.
That's amazing. Yeah. I remember being like, bro, you've got to be kidding me. And you were like, you looked at me and it was like you were not
budging,
willing to go to the store and buy you were like, no, we have passed the point.
That's right. We're too far in.
We are putting these napkins in these boxes. Because we had all the volunteers there.
Yes.
And I said, all right, baby. And I just walked away.
And you were like, look where we are today.
Look where we are
today.
today.
The Lord has blessed those napkins and multiplied other things.
He has. And everybody was fine. And we got no negative feedback on the napkins. And I'm sure they did their job.
I'm sure that wasn't a question on the survey, though.
No.
What were your feelings about the napkins in your treat box? No.
Okay, I'm so ready.
Okay, you ready?
Okay,
You're going to love it.
What travel sound machine?
Oh my gosh. Why are you not thrilled?
I don't know what it is. What does that mean?
When we traveled together this semester, you traveled with
a
sound machine.
This is the perfect gift.
And I thought instead of traveling with the one you use at your house, you should have a separate one.
This is the perfect gift. This is
now
very thoughtful.
You can take it with you wherever you go.
This is the most thoughtful thing you have ever... I have tears in my eyes.
I'm supporting your sound machine season.
This is the most thoughtful thing. And we've come a long way, friend. Because when we roomed together in South Carolina, I was like, I almost brought my sound machine. And she was like, I think people that use sound machines are weird.
I didn't realize that I was offending you because I didn't know that you used one.
No, but it didn't offend me. But I was like, well, it helps a lot with Snorri McGee that I sleep next to, you know. And then we roomed together in Dallas. And
you brought it?
I brought it that time. But I had to unplug my big one at home. And so this is the most thoughtful gift ever.
Yay! I'm so excited.
This is
Look how cute he is. He's so mini.
Okay, we need to link this in our Amazon shop.
Our mini sound machine.
Or did you find this on like a Kohl's clearance?
No, girl. This is not Kohl's clearance. This is not even Belk. This is Amazon. So all of our listeners
so we can link it.
Can have their own sound machine, which honestly, lots of people do travel with them for their kids and stuff.
Yeah.
So this is not a bad thing to have.
Dude, this
people need it.
Is so cute. It's the perfect size. It's easy to pack. It's got a timer on it. It's got different sounds. And then I guess, you just use like the little charger.
Yeah.
Dude, this is amazing. I love it. Okay, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to try and show it.
Celebrate Kate's gift. Come on.
You knocked this out of the park.
I did not buy myself one either. I only bought you one.
Well,
I'm not in the sound machine era yet.
This
maybe one day
is wonderful and so thoughtful. I'm sorry I didn't know right away. I was like, what does this mean? Okay. What does it mean? Honestly, my first thought was like teleportation.
What? I can't buy you teleportation.
Well, it said portable and it said travel, and I was like, what does that mean? What are we going to do? I'm also reading Harry Potter right now. So I'm like...
You're like in the wizarding world. Yes. Yeah, I didn't know you were reading Harry Potter. I could have gotten you a Harry Potter gift.
There's no place like home. There's no place like
That's the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah.
Harry Potter.
It's all wizards, bro. It's all wizards.
Well, that's so funny because that actually connects with what we're talking about today.
This is aesthetic. You crushed.
Oh, it is aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's very aesthetic.
Yeah, you did a great job.
Yes.
You did a great job.
Okay, well, you'll have to try it and see if it's actually a legit one. There are lots on the market, but that was the one I picked
feel
for
confident
you,
this is going to be great.
Hopefully it's
and
loud
we're
enough.
Actually about to head out of town, so I'm going to give it a whirl.
Yeah, you get to take it. I honestly wanted to give it to you early because I was scared someone else in your life would give you one. But apparently other people don't think about sound machines as gifts.
But okay, here's what I love about this. It's just like the thoughtfulness. Because you saw me, you knew it was something I would actually need. And those are my favorite gifts, honestly, are very practical presents. So thank you.
Well, and just as a side note, when we were in Dallas, she had her sound machine on in the bedroom we were in with the door open. And Jenny and I were out in the living room doing something. And I went in to grab something from the bedroom, and then I closed the door, and Jenny goes, wow, it's so much quieter now. Because that sound machine is so loud.
It is loud. Dude, I need to link that thing, though, too, because my stepmom got it for me because we were both complaining about my dad and, my husband snoring. And so it's right next to my bed, and I don't know, it's cool looking, like it's not gross or whatever. So it can sit on my nightstand, and you can go up with the sound or down with the sound, but it's just one sound. It's just white noise.
Right.
I don't really get into water sounds.
Like rain.
Yeah.
Leaves rustling.
That makes me feel stressed out.
Waves.
I don't know what the deal is. Yeah. Either it's like stressy or I have to pee, I was at working from the coffee shop the other day, and I really like to listen to all sorts of stuff when I work. Like sometimes I listen to TV shows I've seen before. Yeah. Like I'm currently listening to King of Queens while I work. I think that's
could totally
like a little bit
about you, yes.
Yeah, I'm like an ADD type thing where like I'm not paying any attention to the show, but just the noise. But if I'm writing, I can't have all that talk going. So then I listen to like a studying background soundtrack or work background soundtrack. And I couldn't find the one Jeremy and I always use, so I kept trying all these, and they were all water. I'm like, who wants to listen to this while they're...
Abby listens to like rain or something while she sleeps. Yeah.
It's so watery. It's like, I don't know. It just feels stressful to me. I'm like, no, just give me like...
That's like you're getting a massage. I can't handle the spa music. No.
Really?
Mm-mm.
What would you want as your spa music?
Silence. No, remember I told you, I'm talk radio or silence. I'm not in between.
Silence during a massage?
I just love anything silent. I just love when there's quiet in my life, which is why when we sleep, it has to be like very quiet.
You actually taught, I know we have gone very off tangent
Yes,
on
we have.
this whole thing, but we did a retreat for women one time, and you taught about, gosh, I wish I remember the biblical principle because it was good, but you talked about our need for silence, that we just live in so much noise. And actually since then, because I noticed I was always having noise with me wherever I went. And so since then, I have more of a practice of like getting dressed in the quiet, driving in the car when it's quiet, going for a walk and not taking any headphones, like just some of that quietness, because we just live in such a noisy world.
Yeah, we really do. Well, I'm so excited you loved your Christmas present. Spreading joy.
Yes. And
one sound machine at a time.
there's a beautiful Christmas song called Silent Night.
Oh,
What a segue.
what a segue into the Christmas story. Actually, I'm going to use your Harry Potter Wizarding World and to segue into today's. Because we're talking about the Magi.
Yeah.
And they were they were like all forms of astrology, astronomy, all the things.
Yeah.
I don't know that you would call them a wizard, but anyway, yes.
I can definitely see the connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so throughout this Christmas series, we have been looking at kind of this idea of the dichotomy of Christmas, that there's both high and low. Yeah. There's joy and hope, and there's light that comes through the birth of Jesus, but there's also pain and trial and frustration that comes with living in a broken world. And as Christians, we experience this on a daily basis. But because we're believers, we can handle it differently than the world does, because we do have the hope of Jesus. And so any of the trial that we face is not wasted.
Right.
So this Christmas story highlights how the people in the story, Mary and Elizabeth and the shepherds, they experience the same things we do. The joy and hope of Jesus and his birth, but also the pain and trial of having to live in a broken world. So we've looked at Mary, the mother of Jesus. We've looked at her experience as being a teenage mom in a situation that's never before happened in the history of the world.
Right.
We've also talked about the angels and their announcement to these lowly shepherds that you would never guess would be the first to hear about Jesus. But then just the idea of Mary having to give birth in a place that we as moms today would never, ever want.
Yeah.
And then having to lay this precious new baby in this dirty manger and all that comes with it. But then today we're going to finish our Christmas series with the Magi, who were the wise men from afar that followed a star to bring worship to the true King of Kings. So let's start with reading the scripture. It's out of Matthew 2, 1 through 11. It says, "Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, 'Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him.' When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. And they told him, 'In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel.' Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, 'Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him.' After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way." I love the Christmas story. Don't you, when you read it? It's just like, I just love it.
So new things popped out to me when you read it that time. I heard things in there that I hadn't really heard before.
Okay.
The shadiness of Herod, I'd never picked up before on the sentence where it says he pulled them into a secret meeting.
Yes.
And asked them more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, okay, I don't know. It's just how manipulative, and, that his own ego was at stake. And he did not want someone else to be worshipped. He did not want someone else to get glory. And there's so much there.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. It's this idea of that for us, Christmas brings worship, But for others, Christmas brought war. Because for Herod, this was the worst thing that could happen to him. He was so concerned with his leadership and power that as soon as he heard there might be another king on the horizon, he was ready to go after him.
Yeah.
So let's start with what the Bible says about these wise men. So they're called Magi, which means wise men in Greek. And they were probably astrologers because their study of the sky and the stars is what led them to Jesus. And so my question immediately arises, well, how did they even know to follow a star?
Yeah.
Like, I know they studied the stars, but how do they know that this star leads to the King of the Jews?
Well, I think, are you really asking? Or do you know the answer?
No, I have an answer. But
okay.
You can jump in.
Well, haven't we studied before that potentially Daniel? Okay, so potentially Daniel, this is just incredible how God did this. But, Daniel, back in the book of Daniel, lived in Israel. They were carted off by the kingdom of Babylon. They go, and then he and his leadership ends up bringing his God to those people.
Right.
And we believe that it's because of him that these guys would ever even know about Jesus, right?
Exactly. That's what I read that the scholar said, which to me is incredible.
Yeah.
Again, you see God's divine providence.
Right.
And something terrible happening to Daniel, being taken away from his homeland.
Right.
But then what this brought about for the Christmas story, that these pagan wise men from a far country would even know about a king of the Jews and search for him. And so it really is very possible that while Daniel was in Babylon and he was put over in charge of all the wise men there, that he taught them the prophecies about the coming Messiah. And so maybe these men had been waiting on Jesus for hundreds of years.
Which just is mind-boggling. And if you go back and you think about, God, here's the thing. This is totally off track, but I say this to people sometimes because I just want them to know, like, the wild adventure that it is to serve God, to read his word, to see his hand, to get to be a part of what he's doing, I think is one of the underrated elements of being a Christian.
Yep.
I don't think people talk about how much fun it is to be part of this meta narrative, and you get to play this one small role, and you get to see Daniel would have never known.
Never. Yep.
Would have never known that was how God was going to use him in multiple ways. But one of the ways that God would use him would be to influence these seekers that would then go looking for the king.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No. And for us as Christians to know that God's divine providence also works in our life.
Yes.
That we never know where we go or who we talk to and how years later when we are gone, that might still impact somebody else.
That's right.
It's so cool. So, and also I think we're confused a little bit because traditionally in most nativities we see these three wise men.
Yeah.
Scholars think because the biblical story talks about three gifts. But what I think is interesting is that they believe it might have been a whole company.
A big old caravan.
A big old caravan, which what you said, what interested you in the scripture was that it greatly troubled Herod, but it says it troubled all Jerusalem with him. Well, it could only trouble all Jerusalem with him if an entire company of rich, wise men show up on the scene in Jerusalem from a far country.
Yeah. Going,
hey, where's the king? And all these people going, what are you talking about?
Right. It wasn't just three homies rolling into town on camels, and it's like, some small thing. Like, this made a splash.
Yes.
And this was a big deal that they rolled in, and it's like, oh. And they all truly believe that they have seen this thing, and there's this, new king that has been born.
Yes.
And you can imagine that made Herod go, wait, I'm about to be dethroned?
Right. Exactly. Yes.
And just then, just the ickiness of him to then pull them aside. Oh, the manipulation, the not wanting to do it in front of everybody.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yes.
Those conversations that happen in side rooms.
Yes. Which happened today.
Where your true heart is revealed.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
So Jesus was born during the time of King Herod, and he was also called Herod the Great, and he and his sons are the ones who ruled over Judea during this time. And what's interesting is the reason he was called Herod the Great was because he was a great builder. So it wasn't because he was a great king, But he is attributed to building so many amazing parts of what is still part of Israel today.
Okay.
And one of them was they say was his greatest project, was the rebuilding and beautification of the temple. He rebuilt the temple in Jerusalem.
Wow. Okay.
And it's restored, what they said, to even greater splendor than in the time of Solomon.
How interesting.
He just loved to build things. He was a
Okay.
master builder, and he built himself a palace.
Okay.
He built this port on the edge of the sea that like helped ships come in. He built this palace up in the hills where I think they said it was his winter palace,
Okay.
but it ended up being a part of history where people had to hide out in it when the Romans came for them. Like, he was just a great builder. So
Okay.
that was just something he was good at. But we always hear him called Herod the Great, and it wasn't because he was a great ruler.
No, that's cool to know.
It's because he was a great builder. But he was also a strange mix of clever and efficient, but also cruel.
Yeah.
So one of the things about him is that he constantly feared conspiracy. He was always afraid that someone was going to take his throne.
Okay.
So stories tell us that he executed his wife when he suspected that she was plotting against him.
Whoa.
Then later he executed 3 of his sons, another wife, and his mother-in-law, because he too feared that they were going to conspire against him.
Okay, but can I tell you, like, that makes your jaw drop, but then you go, well, sure, this is the guy that killed all the babies in the whole region.
Yeah, he was just a cruel tyrant of a leader. One thing I read, and I can't remember who said this, but they said it would be better for you to be Herod's pig than part of his family.
Wow.
Because he might let the pig live, but he's not going to let you, because
Wow.
he was just so cruel and mean. And so you can only imagine his anxiety when this caravan of rich wise men roll into town. They start using words like king and worship. And of course, he is immediately afraid that somebody's
Yeah.
out to get him.
Yeah.
So he does. He gets sneaky and he goes along with their plan and is like, hey, go find him. This sounds great. And then come back and tell me, because I want to go worship him too.
Right.
And the wise men, thankfully, get told in a dream not to do that. But the wise men go on. They find the Mary with this baby Jesus. And scholars believe that Jesus at this point was about 18 months old. So again, in our nativity, they're not showing up with the shepherds on the night of the birth. But it was sometime after that. And it says they fell down and they worshiped him, and they gave him these expensive gifts. Gold, which is a precious metal, frankincense, which is a perfume or incense, and then myrrh, which is an anointing oil. And we could do a whole episode on these gifts and what they mean.
Yeah.
We don't have time for that, but it's just, in my mind, I imagine this beautiful scene of this, rundown house with sweet Mary and this little 18-month-old Jesus sitting on the floor, and this caravan showing up outside her house, and these very well-dressed, probably with crowns, coming in and falling down before this child.
Yeah.
Which for me, I always wonder to them, did they expect to meet an older king? Like, did they expect to meet a baby?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Because it doesn't seem like they're surprised. Like, it feels like they just go right along with it. Like, of course he's a baby.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I just would expect them to think it's...
Because did the prophecy say it was a baby? I can't remember what the prophecy says that they were
No,
looking
the prophecy that we read in the scripture today is just talking about out of Bethlehem, a ruler will come.
Okay.
It doesn't say, which if Daniel had taught them the other prophecies from the Old Testament, then maybe they would have heard a virgin, bearing a child.
Yeah.
So they could
Okay.
have had
Okay.
some background with that. But still, like, would you go into someone's house and worship a baby?
No, it would be strange, but I am thinking about the interesting part of how, because we've been talking about, that it was in the lowly manger that he was born. It was to the shepherds that they were first told. It was, to Mary and Joseph, these poor nobody people. And then, you're talking about dichotomy. So you've got, that was who was there first. But then now we see these rich, influential people show up. Can you imagine they roll into this dusty old town with their big old caravan, and you do see, the people that worship Jesus are, from the lowest to the least to the highest and most respected,
Right.
That everyone worships this king.
Yes. And what a stir that might have caused in Mary's little neighborhood.
Dude.
Like, don't you think her neighbors were like,
Well,
what is happening?
I don't know. She might have been like, I told y'all. I told y'all I didn't step out on Joseph. Do you see who just got up in here?
That's so true.
These people came because they saw a star. I told y'all there was an angel.
Yes, that's so true. But we have this situation, where you've got these wise men coming to worship, but then you have King Herod who's coming for war because he knows that he's threatened. And so after they find Jesus and they give him their gifts, it says that the Magi are warned in a dream not to return to Herod. So they went home a different way. And this, of course, makes Herod furious. So now we're reading in Matthew. We're still going in our story, chapter 2, verse 13 through 18. It says, "Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, 'Rise, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him.' And he rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, 'Out of Egypt I called my son.' Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious. And he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. And this was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted because they are no more." So then you have the innocent, these innocent boys who have no relation to what's going on. Their lives are taken because of this tyrant leader who's prideful and jealous and just decides to try and get rid of all the ones that are there. And my heart just goes to the moms.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's interestingly, this time when I was studying the scriptures to prepare for this series, I learned that there's so many comparisons between Miriam and Moses and Mary and Joseph that I hadn't really fully seen before. And actually, some people say that this Mary, who we call Mary, her Hebrew name would have been Miriam.
Interesting.
And so it's interesting that both of them, for Miriam, Moses' mama, the Pharaoh at the time was killing all of the Hebrew babies because they were multiplying too fast, and he was threatened. And so God uses Miriam's faith to send him out to save that child.
Right.
And so then here we have again this ruler who is so threatened that he then goes and just murders.
Yeah.
How I don't even understand. In our 21st century minds, it is very hard to comprehend that type of genocide. Like how do you do that?
Well, and for the people, Mary's friends, these would have been Mary's friends.
Yes.
Because they were people in Bethlehem.
Yes.
So they were people that had babies about the same time that she did. That just happened to be little boys.
Yes.
And when we went to Israel last year, we got to go to Bethlehem. And we got to go to what they consider the place of the nativity, which is very commercialized today and makes you very uncomfortable because you just know that Jesus would never want that. But one of the things we got to go into was a tomb that they had found. And our guide said that when the archaeologists dug into the tomb, they found the bones of like 8 to 10 small infant children all together in this one tomb. And how interesting that they would have all been buried together, which potentially, we don't know, but could have come from this time. Oh. And of course, when I think of, Herod killing all these babies, I think of hundreds, if not thousands.
Sure.
But Bethlehem was a small town. So it wasn't necessarily hundreds.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter how many or how little. No. It was the killing of innocent children.
Yeah.
And these mothers, who in my mind are being subjected to tragedy.
Yes.
That's very unfair.
Yes.
And so I think that's where I come back to Christmas sometimes and I think about the people in our world today that are being subjected to tragedy. That is so unfair. Yeah. And so for some of us, we get to celebrate at Christmas. And for others of us, they have to endure pain because something has happened in their life that they did not ask for. Yeah. But because of the brokenness of the world, they have to endure. Yeah. Just like these moms had to endure the brokenness of Herod, that he would come after their babies. So I think we see a couple responses to this news of these Magi arriving in town. One, of course, is worship. These pagan men from a far country who potentially have been influenced by a believer in Daniel all these years have come to worship this king that they honestly have know nothing about. They have no I mean, how did they know it was just going to be this small child in this backwoods town, in this lowly house, with dirt floors? But they come and they worship him. And I love that they do not question.
Yeah.
They literally walk in the door and fall before him.
Yeah.
And present super expensive gifts.
Yeah.
Things that were so valuable. But to them, almost as if saying, these gifts do not compare to what you, the King of the Jews, is. Mm-hmm. And then you have the other response of Herod, which is war. Mm-hmm. That I refuse to let anything of mine be taken from me. So I will go to war against anybody who chooses to take it. Mm-hmm. And that's the response that we have. And I think, it doesn't seem that extreme to us in our day and time. Like, of course, I'm not making war on Jesus. But what you talked about in our last episode about the challenge of not allowing the secular nature of Christmas to overtake Jesus, that how many times do I choose my possessions and comfort over the suffering servant of Jesus, who really is what we're supposed to be worshiping?
Well, and I hate to say it because we've talked about what an incredibly nasty man he is, but y'all, we are all Herod. We are all emotionally bankrupt, want our own worship. Mm-hmm. That is why we need a savior. Mm-hmm. And if you relate to anyone in this story, the first person you should relate to is Herod. And if you don't, I think we've gotten too comfortable with our own goodness. And we've forgotten that we are Herod. We need Jesus just as much. Yeah, the Magi, they worshiped him great. But our first instinct is always our own self-preservation, mm-hmm. our own self-glorification, what is best for me. And that should bring us to our knees in worship.
Exactly. Yes, we do not want to be Herod. We want to be the Magi. Right. We want to be willing to offer our most precious possessions to the Christ child.
Yes.
And honor him above everything else. And so I love that we're doing this series, and I love that we did the Advent kit for our moms, because it really is a tangible way to force yourself to stop.
Yeah.
Because that's what worship is. Worship is forcing yourself to stop and putting your eyes on the thing that is more important than anything else. Yeah. And I think so many times, because even this happens to me in church, where we'll be singing a worship song, and it's a beautiful moment, and you can feel the presence of God, and my mind is like thinking about my grocery list.
Oh, for sure.
And you're so distracted,
yes.
and you're already thinking about what you have to do after church.
Yes.
And so I think it's one of those things where for me to worship, it's a constant intentional focus on Christ, reminding myself that everything else can wait, that it does not take precedence over him, but it's not something that's easy.
No, and being quick to apologize. I can't tell you how often in worship I'm sitting there worshiping, and then I get convicted about where my thoughts actually are, and I just say out loud, I'm so sorry, God. Mm-hmm. Help me.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. There are plenty of times, and even in my life, I'll be thinking something badly about someone, or I'm driving in traffic and get frustrated. And, that we would realize, I just think there is something key about realizing that we're more like Herod than anybody else in the story.
Yep.
And just saying, God, we're so sorry, and that would bring us to our knees in worship.
Agreed. No, and I think that's something that, as we come up on the Christmas day that we're going to celebrate, and I said this on the last episode, if you haven't done that yet in this season, do not feel guilty or shameful. Just stop right now and decide that you're going to put your worship and your focus on Jesus. Mm-hmm. Because we all know that between now and the new year, there will be other circumstances that will draw us away. Mm-hmm. But what Kate just said, you just stop and say, I'm so sorry. Mm-hmm. And you just put your mind back on Christ. Mm-hmm. Because that's all he wants from us, is for us just to stop and ask him for help to give him our worship.
Yep.
And the other thing I want to encourage us to do based on this story is to think about those people in our world that have to face the persecution that they did not ask for.
Right.
Like these moms.
Yes.
And there are so many people in countries around the world where they do not have the freedom to worship.
Right.
And their children are taken from them. Mm-hmm. They are killed. Mm-hmm. They are maimed. Mm-hmm. Their villages are destroyed. Mm-hmm. And they are under the scrutiny and the evil tyranny of people that do not love God.
That's right.
And we are so blessed to live in a country where we can freely worship and celebrate Christmas.
Yes.
But there are so many people that can't. And so just as I consider these moms who had to give up their babies for this terrible leader, I think about the people across the world.
That's really good, Becca.
That also have to give up their babies.
Yes.
Because of terrible leaders.
That's
and
good.
So maybe just consider with your family this season just to pray for them.
Yeah.
And ask God to bless them wherever they are.
Yeah.
And that's what we know about God, and that's how we started this episode, that nothing is wasted.
Right.
So in the tragedy and the pain that all of us could face at Christmas time, we know that God redeems that for his glory and his good, and that one day we will celebrate in heaven with him, and there will be no more tears and no more crying and no more death. And so we celebrate that this Christmas season.
That's right.
So moms, we love you so much. Thank you so much for joining us for this Christmas series. We wish you the merriest, best Christmas ever.
The merriest, best. Remember, Rebecca claimed it. This is the best Christmas ever.
Yes.
So go get it.
Go get it. We love you, moms.
Love you, moms.
See you in the new year.